Celeste Marr lost her place on the flight deck at Highfire aerial citadel, while 6 war dragons watched the smoke-banding ceremony in silence. She stood before the launch rails in a mechanic's coat, her scarred hands uncovered because Sky Marshal Ruvik Dane had ordered the court to see them. Grey-black lines climbed from her palms to her wrists, burns beneath smoke stains. "Smoke-touched personnel may not approach a royal engine," Ruvik announced. "The law protects the fleet from contamination and omen, bearing residue." Celeste looked past him to Dragon King Oren Thorne. Once, Oren had trusted her beneath a burning wing. Now he stood beside the launch standard, reading the inspection slate instead of her face. A bronze vial locked into the slate's lower edge held the questioned vent ash certified as contamination residue. "My hands are not contaminated," Celeste said. "They are carrying what your vents failed to release." Ruvik raised the slate. 3 engines showed smoke recoil after she serviced them. 2 young dragons refused launch until her tools were removed. They refused because the exhaust chambers were choking, or because dragons recognize dangerous residue before human gauges do. For years, Celeste had cleared crash smoke from engine throats and entered wrecks while mechanics waited for metal to cool. Smoke draw mechanics used grounded contact to pull trapped exhaust through heat channels. Silver draw gloves carried pressure away from skin. Celeste had burned through so often in rescue that exposure fixed heat signatures into her hands. No single fire had made her scars. Every rescue had left more darkness beneath her skin. Oren stepped down. "Did you enter Flight Bay 3 after quarantine?" "Yes." "Did you touch the vent assembly without authorization?" The vent was sealed with 2 riders still breathing behind it. Ruvik remained calm. "Compassion does not suspend contamination law." "No," Celeste said. "But survival should interrupt paperwork." Oren's fingers tightened against the launch standard, but he did not step between Celeste and the band. "The slate says residue increased after your contact, because I drew it out." "With what device?" "My hands." Ruvik faced the captains. "Repeated exposure may have made her body a smoke vessel. That does not make the residue safe." "Test the vent ash," Celeste said. "It has been tested by your officers. Then let the Sky Furnace read it." The Sky Furnace compared heat signatures from flesh, fuel, metal, and dragonfire. It could determine whether residue was generated by a body or carried by one, but not intent, sabotage, or who altered event. Old dragon law required the accused worker, questioned ash, and royal seal authorizing the disputed action. The evidence vessel had to remain beneath the seal binding the launch. A full review required engine parts, records, and sworn testimony, and could hold the formation for hours. An emergency source reading could compare fresh recoil with submitted evidence and answer only whether a body generated the smoke or carried it. Ruvik spoke before Oren could answer. "Full review will delay the Eastern Formation beyond its weather window. The formation should not launch," Celeste said. Oren's eyes narrowed. "Why?" "The upper release channels are internally narrowed. Under full flame, dragonfire exhaust will fold backward into the rider's lungs. Armored harness ribs along each dragon's shoulders carried excess dragonfire away from the rider platform. All 6 vents passed surface gauge and core width inspection," Ruvik said. "They passed surface inspection. You have no proof of internal restriction. I have 6 scars that were not there last winter. One had appeared after each eastern engine she purged. Each retained a different vent heat signature. Oren could delay the formation, order neutral inspection, impound the ash, or place the dispute before the furnace. Instead, he pressed the royal launch seal into the slate beneath Ruvik's findings. Celeste Marr is removed from flight decks and engine bays pending inquiry. Her tools are sealed. Her access mark is suspended. Ruvik extended the black smoke band. Celeste fastened it around her sleeve. "You once told me my hands were the reason your fleet came home. That was before 3 engines failed after your contact, and the dragons began refusing your tools. No, It was before you needed the marks to mean something shameful. The first engine ignited cleanly. The second released a black cough. Cold. Start recoil, Ruvik said. The vents will clear at open pressure. At the third ignition, smoke rolled backward beneath the wing plates. Cut the climb flame, Celeste said. Rail ignition is locked. Cutting flame under load can rupture the harness cores. Clear the rails and purge at altitude. Ruvik held launch command. Oren alone could break a sealed royal formation after ignition. Oren hesitated for one breath. He did not give the countermand. Ruvik raised his command staff. Launch. The 6 dragons leapt. A pressure wave struck the citadel. 3 riders folded over their saddles as black smoke burst from the harness vents. The lead dragon lost height. Each harness remained connected to the rail by a recoil sampling coupling until the dragon cleared the outer bronze arch. During failed ignition, the couplings trapped one breath of backward exhaust. Celeste tore the suspended access mark from her coat and struck its grounded copper edge against the emergency furnace plate. Disputed smoke under royal seal. Carry the backflow to source. Suspension removed workplace access, not a licensed mechanic's right to preserve life during an active, sealed launch failure. Every royal rail carried an emergency exhaust line to the Sky furnace. Celeste's invocation opened the 6-dragon manifold and sent the retained samples into the forge, where Ruvik's sealed ash vial rested beneath Oren's royal mark. The furnace doors released. In source reading, red fire marked smoke generated by flesh. Blue marked foreign smoke carried from metal or dragonfire channels by a living draw host. Blue fire crossed the bronze floor and climbed Celeste's scarred hands. Only the 6 newest marks burned beneath her skin. Inside the furnace, 6 columns of Eastern engine smoke rose. Each carried a different vent signature. During comparison, smoke bent toward the matching containment signature and away from its point of origin. Each column bent toward the scar that already held it. Celeste ordered the lower recovery rails opened before the lead dragon struck the citadel wall. Drop the catch nets. Clear the west cradle. Bring the flame-dampening chains. The black smoke band still circled her sleeve. Her ordinary access mark remained suspended, and 2 deck guards moved to block her from the launch controls. Oren reached the lower rail first. Emergency rescue access under my seal, he said. Limited to rider recovery, dragon stabilization, and evidence preservation. It does not restore her flight deck office. Celeste did not thank him. Then move your guards. The lead harness is feeding smoke into the rider cradle. The first dragon hit the outer cradle hard enough to bend a bronze brace. Celeste directed the net crews under its left wing while healers pulled the unconscious rider free. The second dragon landed on one foreleg, coughing black vapor through the shoulder vents. The remaining 4 circled back under broken formation signals. Ruvik came down from the command platform, carrying the certified launch copy. The original inspection slate and its bronze ash vial remained sealed inside the Sky furnace. The furnace reading proves only that her scars contain engine residue, he said. It does not prove the vents were obstructed. Celeste knelt beside the second harness and placed 2 fingers against the cooled casing. That is correct. Several officers looked at her as though agreement should have weakened her. The furnace proved the smoke came from the engines and that my hands carried it. Internal restriction still requires physical inspection. Oren looked toward the upper forge. Impound all 6 harnesses. Ruvik's expression tightened. Cooling and dismantling the eastern formation will ground the defense line. The formation is already grounded. Then allow my engineers to inspect under standard command procedure. No, Celeste said. The questioned ash came through your clerks, and the launch proceeded under your judgment. Neutral custody or the measurements mean nothing. Ruvik turned to Oren. She remains under contamination suspension, and she is not asking for restoration, Oren said. The harnesses will be examined outside the launch chain. Celeste rose. 2 furnace mechanics, 1 dragon healer, and 1 rider, safety clerk, Ruvik and I may observe and challenge measurements, but neither of us handles a rib after removal. Oren issued the order. Every finding would require both mechanics' signatures and the rider safety clerk's countersign. Numbered tags were fixed to the harnesses before any plate was opened. Recovery crews brought the final dragons onto the lower rails one at a time. 2 riders were conscious but disoriented. One remained trapped behind a warped vent plate where backflow had heated the locking pins. Celeste took a cutting hook from the emergency rack. A guard hesitated. "Your access is restricted. My life preservation license is not." Oren stepped aside rather than speak for her. Celeste grounded the hook through the cradle frame and cut only the outer pin. Smoke bled from the seam. She waited for the pressure gauge to fall, then released the plate and helped the healers lift the rider clear. When the last rider was breathing beneath a healer's mask, she removed her hands from the harness, sealed the racks. The neutral panel cooled all 6 assemblies under numbered custody. Surface gauges showed legal opening width. "As my officers reported," Ruvik said. "The outer vents comply." Celeste pointed toward the rib shadows inside the first channel. "Measure at the second bend." A mechanic inserted a silver depth gauge. It stopped 3 finger widths early. He repeated the measurement, then tested the second harness. By the 6th, every upper release channel showed the same internal reduction at the same depth. Ruvik's jaw hardened. The narrowing matches a lawful high-altitude efficiency template. It increases forward exhaust pressure in thin air. The rider safety clerk opened the template rules. The modification is legal only with a thinner flame mix, recalibrated pressure valves, and a reduced first climb load. The Dragon Healer checked the engine plates. None of the 6 carries those companion adjustments. Ruvik remained controlled. The template itself was authorized. A missing retuning order may be administrative failure, not sabotage. Then determine when the narrowing was applied and who authorized the installation, Celeste said. Oren faced the assembled crews. "I saw the backflow before launch. I alone could have broken the formation seal after ignition." The deck fell silent. "I did not countermand." Celeste looked at him once. He did not ask her to soften the admission. The Eastern Formation was placed under mechanical quarantine. None of the 6 dragons could return to flight duty until the ribs were replaced, the exhaust channels restored, and every rider cleared by a lung healer. The first internal rib was removed under numbered custody and laid on black evidence cloth. Both mechanics signed the extraction line. The rider safety clerk recorded its position and orientation before the underside was cleaned. Beside the narrowing cut lay a newer authorization impression. It belonged to the Sky Marshal's engineering office. Ruvik's voice remained even. "That seal identifies a division, not the officer who used it. My engineering office processes hundreds of maintenance orders. The office impression identifies the authority channel, not your personal hand," Celeste said. "Preserve the order register and identify who held the seal." The mechanic cleaned deeper. Beneath the newer impression, nearly erased by the cut, lay the original acceptance mark and its full-width gauge code. The rider safety clerk opened the manufacturing ledger and matched the code. The rib had entered active service at regulation width. Someone had narrowed it afterward, under the authority of Ruvik's office. Oren ordered the Sky Marshal's maintenance register sealed before any officer could remove a single work order. 2 furnace clerks outside Ruvik's command locked the lower records cabinets. The rider safety clerk held one key. The royal archivist held the second. Celeste and Ruvik could observe, challenge findings, and request certified copies, but neither could touch an original page. The black smoke band remained on Celeste's sleeve. Ruvik looked at it before he faced Oren. "You have grounded the Eastern Formation, placed my office seal under temporary custody, and opened military records while the reporting mechanic remains under contamination inquiry." The seal rested in the archive vault. It could not authorize new Eastern Formation work. Other division orders required an independent countersign until the records were examined. "Not on her word," Oren said. on 6 narrowed ribs, 6 missing retuning adjustments, and an authorization impression belonging to your division. The impression identifies an office, not an officer. That is why the office is being examined. The seal register named 7 authorized users: Ruvik, his deputy, 2 senior engineering clerks, the Northern Repair Commander, and 2 wartime maintenance officers whose commissions had never been formally closed. The second winter maintenance ledger contained the disputed order: high-altitude efficiency ribs approved for the Six Dragon Eastern Formation, installation permitted during scheduled engine cooling, companion flame retuning to follow under linked order. The order appeared valid on its face. The linked reference box held a number, but no matching retuning order sat in the register. Ruvik read the line: wartime reorganization separated tuning records from structural maintenance. The work may survive in a bay log, rider file, or temporary field book. Missing work cannot be presumed completed, because the paperwork would be inconvenient to find, Celeste said, and missing paperwork cannot be presumed criminal because it supports your warning. I did not say criminal. I said the engines were launched without proof of the safety work required by the modification. The archivist entered her words into the inquiry record. By second bell, all 6 dragons were stable under mechanical quarantine. 5 riders were breathing without assistance. The 6th remained under lung healer watch. A furnace mechanic placed the removed rib beneath a magnifying frame. The narrowing cut carried a repeating 3-tooth pressure pattern. This was not shaped by hand, he said. A crown-depth shaping jaw made the cut. How many engineering bays held one that winter? Oren asked. 4. The Sky Marshal's Central Bay, the Northern Repair Bay, the Old War Dock, and the Royal Prototype Forge. The pattern narrows location, not operator, Ruvik said. Agreed, Celeste answered. Compare the intake schedules. The Central Bay had recorded ceremonial repairs. The Old War Dock had closed after a roof fire. The Prototype Forge showed no eastern harness intake. The Northern Repair Bay had received all 6 harnesses for scheduled cooling 3 days before the modification order appeared. The Northern Bay was supervised by Master Mechanic Halron Voss. After the Repair Commander approved intake, Halron alone could countersign crown depth shaping work on an active service rib. His authority covered the physical cut, not flame retuning. A separate order still had to certify the engine adjustments. The schedule proves opportunity, Ruvik said. It does not prove the ribs were cut there or that Halron operated the tool. No one has said it does, Celeste replied. Oren studied the intake sheet. You warned me during the test season. I warned your officers after the first 2 engines. After the 4th, I requested internal measurement. After the 6th, Ruvik's clerks classified the new marks on my hands as contamination spread. I signed the suspension. Yes. She gave him no further answer. The archivist examined the modification entry against the surrounding page. Earlier orders had been written before the closing line and fixed beneath the month-end heat stamp. The disputed line sat above it. Its ink resembled the older entries. Its heat did not. Under the furnace lamp, the earlier writing released a dull amber halo. The modification line burned pale white. It was added after the ledger page closed, the archivist said. How much later? Oren asked. The lamp establishes sequence, not an exact date. Ruvik's counsel leaned over the table. Late entry is not proof of invention. Wartime orders were often transferred after a page closed. Lawfully, the archivist said. But the clerk had to record the original field authority, the source document, and the transfer date. The modification line named none of them. No field order source. No transfer date. No back-entry notation. Oren looked toward Ruvik. The disputed engineering seal is removed from active use until the authorization chain is established. Division orders now require the Royal Archivist's countersign and verification by an independent furnace mechanic. Ruvik remained Sky Marshal. You are not removed without evidence identifying your act, Oren continued. Ruvik inclined his head. A distinction the court should remember when fear asks for a convenient villain. Celeste's ordinary flight access remained suspended. Oren faced her. The evidence undermining the contamination classification is growing. Then let the evidence finish its work. The archivist turned the ledger toward the furnace lamp again. Beneath the office impression, she found a faint mechanic's countersign written in the same pale white heat as the modification line. Both marks sat above the closed-page heat layer. She compared the countersign with the Northern Bay Authority roll, 2 certified shaping jaw orders, and Halron Voss's registered mechanic mark. The mark reproduces Halron's countersign closely enough to claim his authority, she said. It cannot establish who placed it here. A clerk might have copied a genuine field authorization Halron issued while alive. Someone might have reused his registered mark after his death, or the countersign might have been imitated. The furnace lamp showed only that the mechanic's countersign and the modification line had entered the closed ledger during the same late entry period. The archivist opened the engineering death roll. Halron Voss had been buried 11 days before the dated modification order. The royal archivist sealed Halron Voss's surviving field books before anyone could decide whether the dead mechanic's authority had been copied or stolen. His death was verified against the Northern Chapel roll, engineering pension ledger, and repair bay attendance book. All 3 placed his burial 11 days before the dated rib modification order. Ruvik stood beside the sealed cabinet. That proves Halron did not write the late ledger entry on its stated date, he said. It does not prove his field authority never existed. The black smoke band remained on Celeste's sleeve. Agreed. A dead name is not the same as a forged order. Oren looked toward her. What separates the possibilities? The original field instruction, the registered seal custody, and the Bay tool logs. Halron's first field book contained pressure tests, harness intake notes, and 2 certified shaping jaw orders. Each lawful order carried his registered mechanic mark. 3 narrow pressure points, a shallow spacing notch, and an uneven release at the right edge where Halron lifted the seal from hot wax. The late countersign looked almost identical. Under the archivist's lens, the first 3 points matched. The spacing notch was centered, and the right edge released too evenly. Ruvik's counsel folded his hands. A clerk transferring a lawful field authority into the permanent ledger could produce a centered impression, or someone pressed Halron's physical seal without Halron's hand, Celeste said, or imitated it. The difference narrows method. It does not identify intent. The comparison could not determine who placed the mark, whether the physical seal had been used, or whether an earlier field instruction had been genuine. The mechanic seal return register was opened next. The day after Halron's burial, the Northern Repair Commander had signed an inventory acknowledging temporary possession of the dead mechanic's tools and registered seal. That inventory placed the items under Bay custody. It did not satisfy the separate requirement that Halron's seal be surrendered to the Central Archive. The tools were accounted for. The seal was not recorded as returned. A deceased master mechanic's seal may remain in a bay only to complete an active work order, the archivist said. The register must name the order, the officer assuming responsibility, and the expected surrender date. No order was named. No responsible officer appeared. No lawful transfer note had been entered. Ruvik remained composed. The Northern Bay was operating under wartime procedure. Delayed return may be irregular without being theft. Then the custody record must tell us who could reach it, Celeste said. The Bay key log showed 4 entries into the shaping room during the 9 days after Halron's burial. The Northern Repair Commander, a senior toolkeeper, and 2 wartime maintenance officers identified only by commission numbers. One commission had expired before Halron died. The other remained active. Those entries established access, while Halron's seal remained under Bay custody. They did not establish who handled it. A commission number is not a name, Ruvik said. A clerk may have copied it from a transfer note. The officer may have authorized a return remotely, or someone may have misused an active credential. Then preserve the commission roll before anyone decides which explanation is convenient, Oren said. He ordered the key log, shaping jaw custody book, and wartime roll placed under the same joint lock as the maintenance ledger. The records implicate an authorization chain, he told Ruvik. They do not yet identify your act. Ruvik inclined his head. That restraint is late but still useful. Celeste did not defend Oren. A lung healer entered with the flight report. All 6 dragons were stable but remained under mechanical quarantine. 5 riders had been released from assisted breathing. The 6th could speak, but the damage to his lungs would keep him from flight for the season. Oren read the report in silence. You had warnings before any of them climbed, Celeste said. I know. Knowing now does not reduce what they inhaled then. No. The missing flame retuning packet was examined separately. The central tuning archive held no matching order. Neither did the rider safety files or the 6 engine plates. A Northern Bay index listed a flame adjustment packet, but its storage box was empty. That may be the missing work, Ruvik said. Or only proof that someone expected a packet to exist, Celeste replied. The box still carried an archive seal. Its checkout line was blank. The archivist could not determine whether the packet had been removed before sealing, taken without entry, or never placed inside. The shaping jaw custody book confirmed that the tool had been checked out during the cooling period when the 6 harnesses entered the Northern Bay. Its return field contained an original mark and a later correction written over it. Furnace heat showed both had been entered before the page closed and before the disputed modification line was added. The correction changes the return time, the archivist said. It does not name an operator. Tool access and seal access remained separate questions. Nothing yet proved that the person who handled one had handled the other. Celeste's ordinary flight suspension remained in force. Once a smoke touch classification had been entered beneath a royal seal, the black band could be removed only when the inquiry was dismissed or a final source ruling overturned the classification. Before Oren signed it, he could have ordered neutral suspension without public banding. I cannot remove it by preference while the formal inquiry remains open, Oren said. You could have refused to place it on me before the evidence was tested. Yes. The archivist reached the final page of the mechanic seal return register. Halloran Voss's registered seal had remained under Northern Bay custody for 9 days after his burial. It was surrendered to the Central Archive on the 10th. The rib modification order carried the following day's date. The return line named no person. It carried only the still active Wartime Maintenance Commission number. The Wartime Commission roll had been open for less than a minute when the Royal Archivist found 2 assignments attached to the same maintenance credential. The first named Captain Evan Roke, a wartime engineer whose commission had remained active after the Eastern campaigns. The second appeared, 6 months later, as a temporary reassignment. Its bearer line had been scraped and rewritten, leaving only a surname initial and the same commission number. The roll remained under joint custody. The rider safety clerk read each line aloud, while 2 furnace clerks made certified copies. Celeste and Ruvik stood on opposite sides of the table, permitted to challenge the record but not touch it. The black smoke band still marked Celeste's sleeve. Ruvik studied the damaged assignment. Rotating credentials between repair commands was common when qualified engineers were scarce. Common rotation still required a named receiving officer, the archivist said, unless the transfer was entered from a field order later damaged. Celeste looked at the duplicated number. Duplication proves the credential cannot identify one person by itself. It does not prove lawful reassignment. Ruvik inclined his head. A distinction worth preserving. The original bearer, Captain Roke, was alive and serving at Stormglass Citadel. A message order was sent requesting his testimony and travel records. The temporary bearer could not yet be identified. The surname initial matched 3 former maintenance officers, 1 discharged, 1 missing after a border evacuation, and one whose personnel file had been transferred to an unopened war archive. Oren stood behind the archivist, rather than taking the questioning chair. "The witness examination will not be conducted by me," he said. "My launch seal, Celeste's classification, and Ruvik's command are all under review." It was the first time he had removed his authority from a room before someone forced him to. Celeste noticed. She did not reward it. The seal return line was compared with the commission roll. The anonymous entry had been written in a square military hand. Captain Roke's surviving reports used a narrow slant. The temporary reassignment line showed a third style entirely. 3 hands, the archivist said. Original commission, later reassignment, and seal return. Ruvik's counsel answered. A clerk could have completed the return under a remotely authorized number. Yes, Celeste said. Or someone could have used a credential that no longer identified a single officer. No handwriting comparison could establish who stood inside the northern bay. The missing flame retuning packet offered no cleaner answer. Its empty storage box carried an archive seal applied 2 days after Halron's burial. The checkout line remained blank. Furnace heat showed the index entry had been written before the box was sealed. So a packet was expected, Ruvik said. Expected is not received, Celeste replied. The archivist searched the transfer bundles. One routing slip listed the same packet number and directed it from the northern bay to Central Tuning Review. The recipient box was empty. No return receipt survived. The slip could mean the packet left the bay. It could also mean someone prepared a route it never traveled. A lung healer requested the inquiry pause. The 6th rider, still unable to stand without assistance, had asked to give a limited statement. The hearing moved to the recovery ward, so he would not be carried into the records chamber. Oren remained at the rear. The rider's voice was rough. During the last 2 test flights, the harness pushed heat back before the climb signal. Did you report it? The rider, safety clerk, asked. To the formation technician. I was told the pressure would clear after the new ribs settled. Who told you that? I never saw his face. He spoke through the lower inspection grate. Ruvik asked permission before speaking. Did the voice identify my office? No. Did it identify Celeste Marr? The rider looked toward the black band. No. She was the one who opened the rider plate after the 2nd test. The smoke stopped when she put her hands on the ground channel. Celeste did not look at Oren. The statement supported earlier recoil and Celeste's intervention. It did not identify who approved the modification or what records existed. When the hearing returned to the archive, Oren ordered Captain Roke's assignment, the temporary reassignment, the seal return line, and the routing slip preserved as separate evidence chains. Ruvik remained Sky Marshal. Celeste remained barred from ordinary flight duty. The inquiry has weakened the classification against you, Oren said quietly. It has strengthened the truth, she answered. Those are not the same thing. He accepted the distance. Near midnight, the archivist opened the Inter-Citadel Movement register. Captain Ivan Roke had been officially assigned to Stormglass Citadel on the day Halron's seal was returned. His departure and arrival times were both certified by separate garrisons, but the Northern Repair Bay Gate ledger recorded the same maintenance credential entering Highfire before dawn. The credential passed through the gate 3 hours after Roke was logged hundreds of miles away. The duplicated maintenance credential changed the inquiry from a question of presence into a question of controlled access. Captain Ivan Roke could not have entered Highfire before dawn, while his arrival at Stormglass Citadel was being witnessed hundreds of miles away. The northern gate entry therefore proved only that his active number had been presented there. It could have been copied, the Royal Archivist said, transferred without proper reassignment, or entered by a clerk from a false token. Ruvik stood beside the sealed commission roll. Then the gate record does not identify an officer. No, Celeste said. It identifies a credential, someone trusted enough to open the northern bay. A sealed rubbing of Roke's original maintenance token arrived from Stormglass by courier flame. Its edge damage did not match the clean impression preserved in the Highfire gate ledger. Someone had presented a second token carrying the same number. That established duplication. It did not establish who made or carried the duplicate. Oren ordered the 6 seasonal test flight files brought under joint custody. The 6th rider's statement had named earlier backflow. The official reports described those flights as stable after minor cold start correction. None recorded internal recoil. None named Celeste, but the lower maintenance logs contained 6 separate entries for emergency ground channel purges, one for each eastern engine. Each occurred after the same engine completed a test climb. Each entry listed a destroyed pair of silver draw gloves and a manual pressure discharge performed before the next launch. The worker line read only, "Authorized smoke, draw mechanic." Celeste looked at the dates. "They removed my name after using my hands." Ruvik answered evenly. "Anonymous labor codes were common in restricted flight records. Then why did the contamination inquiry use my name when the same exposure became useful against me?" No one answered immediately. The infirmary ledger supplied what the maintenance reports had omitted. After every purge, Celeste had been treated for heat tremors, smoke fever, and loss of feeling in her fingers. The 6th entry warned that another full draw could cause permanent nerve damage. Earlier infirmary volumes showed the same pattern across 7 years of crash recovery and emergency repair. Those older wounds could not be assigned to the Eastern Formation, but they established that her smoke touch had accumulated through repeated occupational exposure, not a single unexplained event. Oren read the latest warning twice. "You returned to the rails after this? The formation was still flying. You should have refused." Celeste lifted her scarred hands. "You had my reports. You kept signing launches. Do not make my failure to abandon the riders larger than your failure to stop the engines." His face tightened, but he did not defend himself. Ruvik turned to the archivist. "Medical exposure proves she performed dangerous purges. It does not prove the ribs were already narrowed during those flights." "That requires source comparison," Celeste said. For the first time since the failed launch, the original inspection slate was removed from Sky Furnace custody under 3 signatures. The bronze ash vial remained sealed beneath Oren's royal mark. The neutral panel entered the questioned ash. The 6 removed ribs, certified test flight samples, and Celeste's medical record for full review. The furnace could compare material and vent heat signatures. It could not determine who altered the ribs or whether the modification had been deliberate. Celeste placed her hands on the grounded reading plate. Oren stepped toward her. "Your healer said further draw could damage you. This is comparison, not extraction. I will not let the furnace take more from you." She looked at him across the bronze plate. "Do not protect me from proof after you used uncertainty to punish me." He stopped. The furnace burned low and blue. One by one, the 6 newest scars answered. Each matched a different Eastern engine signature, preserved in the test flight ash. The current backflow samples matched them again. The reading established that all 6 engines had produced the same class of dangerous recoil during earlier test flights, and that Celeste had carried that smoke out through grounded contact. It did not establish why. The neutral mechanic compared the earlier samples with the narrowed ribs. "The pressure pattern is consistent," he said, "but the samples cannot date the physical cuts. They prove the engines were recoiling before the final launch." Ruvik's counsel seized the limit. "Then the modification may still have been lawful, with incomplete tuning or later deterioration." "Yes," Celeste said. "The source reading proves repeated failure, not sabotage." The archivist returned to the 6 test files. Beneath the final report, she found a folded command copy attached to the pressure summary. Its routing code belonged to the Sky Marshal's operations desk, but it carried no personal signature. The instruction authorized continued test flights, while retuning remained pending. A final line named the contingency that made grounding unnecessary. "Retain mechanic Celeste Marr, On the lower rail for manual smoke draw stabilization. No launch delay required while manual purge remains available. The command copy was dated 6 weeks before Ruvik's clerks opened the smoke touch contamination case against her. The Six-Dragon Eastern Formation was grounded indefinitely before dawn. The command copy that had treated Celeste Marr as a manual smoke draw safeguard remained beneath joint seal. No personal signature appeared on it. The routing code proved only that the instruction had passed through the Sky Marshal's operations desk. Ruvik read the final line again. Manual purge was a lawful emergency measure, he said. Its use does not prove the modification was concealed or that any officer intended harm. No, Celeste answered. It proves the fleet knew the engines were pushing smoke backward and chose my body instead of completing the retuning. The neutral panel issued its source ruling before the assembled flight officers. The 6 newest marks on Celeste's hands contained foreign exhaust from the eastern engines. Her body had carried the smoke out through trained ground channel contact. It had not generated the contamination named in Oren's classification. The rider's safety clerk opened the formal order. The smoke touch classification is dismissed as technically unsupported. The black band could now be removed. A court attendant stepped forward, but Celeste unfastened it herself. The cloth had left a dark crease around her sleeve. She laid it beside the inspection copy without looking at Oren. No one applauded. Ruvik remained composed. Dismissal of the classification does not establish medical fitness for engine duty. That is also correct, Celeste said. Her damaged hands still required examination. The 6 harnesses remained under quarantine. The vent authorization chain was still unresolved. Oren descended from the command platform. Your access mark will be restored when the lung healer and neutral mechanics clear you. Celeste took the suspended copper mark from the evidence tray. I am not returning to the flight deck. The words moved through the chamber more sharply than any accusation. Oren stopped. The formation needs the mechanic who understands what happened. The formation needed an internal inspection after my first report. I know. It needed retuning after the ribs were narrowed. Yes. Instead, someone wrote me into the failure plan. His gaze dropped to her scarred fingers. I will remove every order that uses manual purge in place of repair. That is work. You should do whether I stay or not. He looked at her then. I am not asking you to stay so I can avoid it. No. You are asking because the fleet has finally discovered what it loses when I stop paying for its safety with my hands. She placed the copper access mark beside the black band. Her smoke draw license remained valid, but she requested that it be transferred to neutral furnace custody. She would give testimony, answer technical questions, and complete no engine work under the same command structure that had used her injuries as both equipment and evidence against her. Ruvik watched her with measured attention. If every mechanic withdrew when command judgment failed, Highfire would not keep a single dragon in the air. If command judgment requires a woman to keep burning so the records can remain clean, Celeste said, then the dragons should remain on the ground. Oren did not order her back. He placed every royal formation using manual purge contingency under immediate review. Until each engine had complete retuning records and an internal vent measurement, no launch commander could substitute a smoke draw mechanic for structural correction. The military consequence arrived within hours. 2 northern patrols were delayed. A medicine convoy had to take the lower storm road. Highfire's western watch lost half its relief formation, while mechanics opened harnesses that had not been internally measured in years. Ruvik confronted Oren beside the closed launch rails. You are grounding defenses on an unsigned command copy and 1 failed formation. I am grounding engines whose safety depends on a person absorbing what the vents should release. You may expose the Citadel before you expose whoever mishandled these records. Then the Citadel will learn the cost of the risk it placed inside Celeste. She heard the exchange from the stairwell but did not turn back. At the lower gate, Oren caught up without guards. Celeste. She paused. I knew the marks were spreading, he said. I told myself your skill made the danger manageable. You saw what it cost, and renamed that cost reliability. I did. She waited, but he did not ask forgiveness. When this inquiry ends, he said, you will still have the right to refuse me, the fleet, and every office I can offer. I already have that right. Yes. Celeste walked out of Highfire Aerial Citadel, carrying neither the band nor her access mark. That night, the Royal Archivist brought Oren the 6 seasonal launch summaries he had sealed during the test period. Each summary described the engines as flight ready. Each contained a narrow annex approving continued operation, while retuning remained pending. At the bottom of every annex was Oren's royal launch seal. Oren did not sleep after finding his royal launch seal on all 6 seasonal annexes. By first bell, he had ordered the summaries copied under joint custody and carried into the public flight chamber. Ruvik arrived in full uniform. Celeste did not. The empty place where she should have stood made every explanation sound smaller. Oren read the first annex aloud. Continued operation permitted while retuning remains pending. Manual smoke, draw stabilization available. He turned to the assembled officers. My seal authorized this. Ruvik answered without raising his voice. Your seal approved formation. Readiness based on reports prepared through multiple offices. It did not certify each maintenance action personally. No, it certified that I accepted the risk. You accepted a lawful contingency. I accepted a woman's body as a contingency. The chamber went still. Oren ordered every annex, launch summary, and manual purge instruction entered into the public record. He did not remove Ruvik's objections. He did not allow the archivist to soften his own language. His first act of repair cost him the protection of ambiguity. He suspended his sole authority to seal a royal formation for launch. Until the inquiry ended, every military departure required 3 independent approvals: a neutral furnace mechanic, a rider, safety clerk, and a dragon healer. The Crown could not override a missing signature for weather, politics, or command urgency. Ruvik's expression hardened. You are surrendering wartime authority during an active defense shortage. I used that authority to keep engines flying after safety work remained unfinished. And if the northern border opens, then I will answer for a slower response. I will not answer for another rider, choking because my seal was easier to obtain than a repair. His second act cost him power. The third began in the infirmary ledgers. Oren ordered compensation for every smoke draw mechanic treated for occupational exposure, including those whose names had been hidden behind anonymous labor codes. Medical care would no longer depend on active service. Damaged draw gloves, nerve injury, smoke fever, and lost flight work would be recorded as service injuries rather than contamination events. The order included back pay for lost duty, replacement gloves, and independent treatment for workers no longer employed by the fleet. The black smoke band law was suspended pending repeal. Ruvik challenged that order immediately. Smoke. Touch classification protects dragons from workers who carry unstable residue. Then future classifications will require a neutral source reading before public banding, Oren said. No worker will be marked first and tested later. The rule did not erase Celeste's humiliation. It prevented the court from repeating it. Oren also created a temporary, independent engine safety commission funded outside the Sky Marshal's command. It could seize harnesses, compare internal vent measurements, and halt launches without royal permission. He offered Celeste no title. He sent the charter to neutral furnace custody with a written invitation for her to review it, amend it, or refuse it. She returned the document before sunset with 3 changes. First, workers could not be ordered to perform manual smoke, draw where structural repair was available. Second, no mechanic's medical exposure could be used as evidence of contamination without testing the engine source. Third, the Commission's chair could not be appointed or removed by the Crown. Below the final clause, Celeste wrote one sentence. Repair is not real, while the person who caused the harm still controls the remedy. Oren accepted all 3 changes. He named no chair. That evening, he went to the lower furnace house, where Celeste had taken temporary lodging. He remained outside the threshold. "The charter carries your amendments," he said. "It carries rules that should have existed before my hands became records. Yes, you have compensated workers your officers already owed. Yes, you have surrendered authority you proved you could not use safely. Yes?" She looked at him through the open doorway. The scars across her hands had faded from blue to grey-black again. "Do not mistake agreement with your repairs for trust in you. I do not. And do not come here asking whether I saw what you gave up. I came to tell you the work will continue, even if you never return." For the first time, her expression shifted. Not forgiveness, only the recognition that he had finally stopped making her presence the price of his decency. Before either could speak again, the royal archivist arrived carrying a sealed brass cylinder recovered from the Sky Marshal's private flight archive. Ruvik followed with counsel. The cylinder was catalogued as a retired wartime command file, the archivist said. Its outer register number matches the missing flame retuning packet. Ruvik's voice remained controlled. "A matching number proves archive placement, not contents." "Correct," Celeste said. The cylinder required 2 conditions to open: the Sky Marshal's active command key and the living mechanic named in the attached contingency order. Ruvik held the key. The mechanic named on the lock plate was Celeste Marr. The brass cylinder was not opened in Ruvik's archive. Celeste refused the threshold. "If my name is part of the lock, then the contents are not examined behind the office that classified me." Ruvik held the active command key. "The cylinder belongs to the Sky Marshal's archive. The missing retuning packet belongs to the safety inquiry." Oren did not decide for her. "What conditions do you require?" "Public opening before the neutral commission." Ruvik turns his key. "I answer the mechanic lock. Neither of us touches the contents after release." Ruvik's counsel objected to public exposure of wartime records. Celeste allowed redaction of unrelated border routes, but not the Eastern Formation, Howlin Voss, manual smoke draw orders, or her service history. At noon, the flight chamber filled with riders, mechanics, healers, and furnace clerks. The 6 quarantined dragons rested beyond the bronze screens, their harnesses removed. Celeste stood at the evidence table without an access mark or smoke band. Ruvik inserted the command key. Celeste placed 2 scarred fingers on the mechanic plate. The lock tested identity through registered heat pressure rhythm, not blood or favor. Her smoke draw license answered despite her resignation from flight duty. The cylinder opened. Inside lay the missing flame retuning packet, 6 valve setting sheets, and a contingency order directing the Eastern Formation to remain in service while final tuning was deferred. The tuning sheets were unsigned. Their adjustment columns were blank. Ruvik read them once. "This proves the packet existed. It does not prove why the work remained incomplete." "No. But it proves the empty archive box was not the tuning record." Beneath the packet lay 6 manual purge reports. Each named Celeste, recorded engine recoil, and certified the formation safe only after she drew smoke through the ground channel. The reports carried the Sky Marshal operations routing code. They did not carry Ruvik's personal signature. Oren's face hardened as the rider safety clerk read the dates. These were withheld from the seasonal summaries. Restricted medical exposure reports are often separated from command readiness records, Ruvik said. "They were not merely medical," Celeste answered. "They were the reason the engines returned to the rails." She requested a full Sky Furnace service loss comparison. Ruvik's counsel objected. "The furnace cannot decide whether command choices were lawful. I'm not asking it to." Celeste placed the 6 purge reports, destroyed glove clasps preserved by the infirmary, test flight ash, and valve sheets under neutral seal. "I am asking it to compare what the engines released what my hands carried, and what the records called safe. The commission approved. Oren approached when Celeste prepared to place her hands on the grounded plate. You do not have to absorb anything for this reading. I know. If the heat rises, you may stop the furnace if the neutral keeper declares danger. You may not remove my hands because watching becomes difficult. He stepped back. Celeste addressed the keeper. Enter all 6 Eastern engines. Read each purge against its scar signature. Show every flight that remained airborne because manual draw replaced the missing retuning. The furnace opened under evidence seal. Blue fire moved through the 6 glove clasps. One after another, Celeste's scar marks answered not with new injury, but with heat already fixed there. 6 measured columns rose. The first showed recoil after the lead engine's second test. The second aligned with the rider plate Celeste had opened by hand. The third, fourth, and fifth matched launches, officially recorded as stable. The 6th carried the highest pressure loss and the infirmary warning that another draw could permanently damage her nerves. The furnace did not display guilt. It displayed repetition. 6 engines had failed in the same direction. 6 launches had continued after Celeste absorbed the evidence. The rider safety clerk amended every test flight record in open session. Stable became stabilized by emergency manual purge. Flight ready became operating without completed retuning. Celeste watched her erased labor return to the page. I will not be restored as the mechanic who made this system survivable, she said. I will serve only if the independent commission becomes permanent. Workers hold stop, launch authority, and no royal or martial seal can override an unresolved internal hazard. Oren answered before the ministers could bargain. Granted, you do not appoint its chair. No. You do not remove its chair. No. And the commission opens every formation that used a living draw host in place of repair. Yes. Celeste turned to the archivist. Record my choice. I accept temporary authority to complete the Eastern inquiry. I do not return to Ruvik's command. The power shift required no crown and no dragon's approval. The archivist lifted the final sheet from the cylinder. It was not a tuning order. It instructed the office to keep all 6 valve-setting columns blank until after the Eastern Defense Review. At the bottom stood a personal command countersign. The neutral clerk compared it with the active command register. The countersign belonged to Sky Marshal Ruvik Dane. The personal countersign did not prove that Ruvik Dane had cut the vent ribs with his own hands. It proved that he had ordered the valve-setting columns left blank, while the Eastern formation remained under review, and that the missing retuning packet had been kept inside his private command archive. Ruvik faced the public chamber without raising his voice. I delayed final tuning until the defense review concluded. The high-altitude ribs increased range. Manual purge kept the engines within operating pressure. Celeste stood opposite him at the evidence table. Manual purge kept the riders alive after the engines exceeded safe pressure. The distinction was not clear during wartime readiness. It was clear in 6 infirmary reports. The royal archivist entered both statements. Oren ordered the unopened war personnel archive brought under joint seal. Ruvik objected that the cylinder's contents did not authorize a search of unrelated commissions. The countersign connects your command archive to the missing safety work, Oren said. The wartime credential appears in the same chain. The commission will examine that chain only. The temporary reassignment line was opened before the riders, mechanics, and healers. The bearer field had been scraped once. Under furnace lamp heat, the older strokes returned. Dane. The attached service role identified Ruvik Dane. Then a wartime maintenance officer with temporary authority over Northern Flight repairs before his promotion to Sky Marshal. The commission number on Halron Voss's seal return line had belonged to Ruvik during that assignment. Ruvik's counsel spoke immediately. A credential assignment does not prove personal presence at the bay. A clerk could have used the number under delegated authority. Correct, Celeste said. Compare the authorization chain. The Northern Gate ledger showed the duplicated credential entering before dawn. The mechanic seal register showed Halron's mark returned under that number. The late rib order carried the Sky Marshal Division impression and a countersign claiming Halron's authority. The private cylinder held blank tuning sheets, manual purge reports, and Ruvik's personal instruction to delay completed valve settings. No single record proved the whole act. Together, they established that Ruvik controlled the credential, accepted the unfinished modification, concealed the missing retuning, and authorized continued launches while Celeste's body absorbed the recoil. Oren looked at him. Did Halron approve the rib work before he died? Ruvik paused. No original instruction survives. That was not my question. Ruvik's composure hardened. Halron said the high-altitude pattern could be made workable. Did he authorize these 6 ribs? I believe the Northern Bay had sufficient authority. Celeste did not let the answer become larger than it was. That is not proof Halron approved them. Record it as Ruvik's belief, not Halron's act. The archivist corrected the line. Ruvik turned toward the officers under his command. I kept the eastern defense in the air while the border was exposed. The retuning delay was temporary. Celeste's manual draw stabilized every test. You knew the engines were failing, Oren said. I knew they could be stabilized. With her hands, with the resource available. Celeste's face did not change. I was not a resource. I was the injury your reports learned to hide. Oren removed Ruvik from flight command pending a military tribunal for concealed safety records, misuse of authorization credentials, and knowingly deploying engines without required retuning. The inquiry into who physically shaped the ribs remained open. Halron Voss's name was cleared of any proven posthumous authorization. Then Oren placed his own launch seals on the evidence table. I approved 6 summaries that called those engines ready. I ignored repeated warnings because continued flight protected my authority and his command. Ruvik used my seal, but I gave it value. He permanently surrendered unilateral launch approval and countermand power to the Independent Commission Charter. No one praised him. The worker, rider, healer, and neutral mechanic representatives met before sunset. They made the Engine Safety Commission permanent and elected Celeste its first chair for a fixed term. The Crown could fund it, testify before it, and obey it. The Crown could not appoint or remove its chair. Celeste accepted on one condition. My scars will not become a heroic emblem used to excuse the system that made them. Record the work, the failed gloves, the withheld repairs, and every person who carried smoke because command preferred delay. The amendment passed. The 6 Eastern Dragons returned to flight weeks later with full-width channels, completed valve tuning, and no manual draw contingency. Their first launch proceeded only after Celeste's commission signed the internal measurements. She watched from the lower rail, not beneath Oren's command. After the formation cleared the outer arch, Oren approached without guards. I do not expect what I broke to return because I finally told the truth. It will not. I know. She studied him. The commission inspects the northern harness bays tomorrow. You may attend as Crown witness. You will follow the same rules as everyone else. I will. And you will not call obedience devotion. No. Celeste turned toward the open rail. After several steps, she slowed enough for him to walk beside her. She did not offer forgiveness. She chose the distance. For the first time, Oren accepted that her choice, not his regret, would decide whether the distance ever closed.